I got home early that Friday. I wasn't supposed to be there until 7, but my last meeting got canceled, and for once I didn't feel like staying late just to look busy. I remember feeling good, really good, in fact. The kind of quiet optimism that makes you stop and grab dinner for two without being asked. I picked up Claire's favorite, Pad CEW, from that tiny Thai place on Fremont she used to swear by when we first moved into the neighborhood. I even swung by the florist, spur of the moment, and grabbed a bunch of stargazer lilies. She loved those. Said they reminded her of her grandmother's garden. It was still daylight when I pulled into our driveway. The sun was slipping low behind the rooftops, casting long shadows across the front lawn. Our porch light hadn't kicked on yet, but something about the house just felt off. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was years of knowing the rhythm of things, how the windows usually glowed around this time, how the dog barked when it heard the gate, except we didn't have a dog anymore, not since Marley passed last year, but I still expected the bark sometimes. Then I noticed the front door was cracked open. Not wide, but enough to unsettle me. We weren't the type to leave the door unlocked, let alone ajar. Claire had a thing about security. She double-checked the locks even in the middle of the day. Always made me roll my eyes, but right then I would have given anything for her obsessive habits to make sense. I stepped inside slowly, one hand still holding the takeout bag, the other hesitating near the doorknob. Everything looked fine. The entryway rug was aligned, no lights flickering, no obvious mess. In fact, it was too clean. Like a hotel room that's just been turned over. I took a few steps in and listened. The air was quiet, except for faint music playing from the kitchen, one of those coffeehouse Spotify playlists Claire liked to put on when she worked from home. I called out, "Claire." No answer. My voice didn't echo or bounce. It just sort of fell flat. Like the house didn't want to answer back. Then I saw it. On the kitchen counter, next to her car keys and a half-empty glass of wine, was a men's leather wallet. It was brown, expensive looking, a little worn around the edges like it had been in someone's back pocket for a long time. The initials RM were monogrammed in the bottom corner in faded gold. I didn't recognize it. Not as something I'd seen before, and definitely not as mine. It was just there. Sitting out. Not hidden. Not dropped or misplaced. Placed deliberately like someone who believed they had a right to be here. I stood there staring at it longer than I cared to admit. My brain was trying to catch up, rewinding the tape and replaying the last few weeks of conversations, movements, stories. None of it made sense. A second later, Claire emerged from the hallway wrapped in her slate blue bathrobe and towel drying her hair. Her skin was flushed, cheeks pink like she'd just stepped out of a hot shower. The scent that hit me wasn't hers, not the usual lavender vanilla blend she wore out of habit. It was deeper, woodsy. Musk. Something a guy might wear, not her. She froze when she saw me. Not completely. Not dramatically. Just enough. The kind of pause that lasts a half-second too long. Long enough for me to register it. "Oh," she said, surprised. "You're home early." "Yeah. Last meeting got canceled. Figured I'd surprise you." I held up the takeout bag and forced a smile. She smiled back, small, tight, a little too calculated. Her eyes flicked to the wallet. Another pause. Then, like flipping a switch, her expression softened. "Oh, right, that." She walked past me, casually picking it up like it was no big deal. "That's Richard's. From work. He left it in my car, and I didn't even notice until I unpacked my bag earlier." "Richard?" I asked. I knew most of her coworkers by name. "Richard who?" "Richard Mays. From finance. We were at the off-site meeting in Palo Alto this morning, remember?" She said it smoothly. Too smoothly. Like someone giving a presentation to a roomful of investors, controlled, precise, confident in every word. "He left his wallet in your car?" "Yeah. He asked me for a ride back to the office afterward, and I guess it fell out of his jacket or something." I meant to text him. She didn't meet my eyes when she said that. Just opened her phone and began tapping out a message, real or pretend. I had no idea. I said nothing. She set the wallet back down, gently this time, almost reverently, then poured herself another glass of wine. I watched her from across the kitchen, wondering how many things I had missed over the past few months. Wondering when my wife had become someone who could lie that easily. "Do you want a glass?" she asked, motioning to the bottle. "No, I'm good." There was a beat of silence. Then she smiled again, wider this time. Like she was trying to project warmth into the room to smooth over a tension we hadn't acknowledged yet. "Thank you for dinner. That was sweet of you." "Sure." Another silence. I set the takeout on the counter and pulled out a stool. Sat down. She moved around the kitchen like everything was fine, humming to the music, unboxing the food, asking if I wanted utensils or if we should just eat off the containers like we used to. She was too composed, too light on her feet. Every movement screamed effortlessness, but it was the kind that comes from effort, rehearsal, not instinct. And that's when I realized something. She wasn't just acting calm. She was trying to manage me. To manage the narrative, the space, my perception. That wallet wasn't the problem. The problem was how quickly she'd folded it into a story, how prepared she seemed. I barely touched my food. She filled the air with small talk. Asked about my day. Laughed at something I said, though I wasn't joking. She kept looking at her phone between bites, subtly, as if waiting for someone to respond. By the time we finished eating, I wasn't hungry anymore. I excused myself, went upstairs, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. Our bedroom was spotless. Sheets perfectly tucked. Her pillows smelled like her, sort of. But different. I glanced at the bathroom door. The shower tiles were still fogged up. 2 towels hung on the rack. One dry. One damp. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. And for the first time since I said I do, I felt like I didn't belong in my own life. Something had shifted. We were still under the same roof. Sharing meals. Using the same toothpaste. But we were no longer living the same story. Whatever chapter she was in, I wasn't in it with her anymore. And I didn't know how long it had been that way. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid in bed with Claire beside me, her back turned, her breathing even, like she didn't have a care in the world. My eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling fan overhead, the blades moving in a slow, quiet rhythm that matched the knot in my chest. My body was still, but my mind wouldn't shut up. Not after that wallet. Not after the way she looked at it, like she hadn't expected me to see it. Like she hadn't prepared for the moment where the lie needed a name. In the morning, she was already gone. Left a note by the coffee maker, running late, presentation this morning. Love you. Same handwriting, same heart dotting the I. Except it didn't feel like love. It felt like autopilot. I stared at the note while the Keurig hummed behind me and realized it had been a while since anything Claire said felt like her. That's when I started keeping track. Not in a paranoid way, at least not at first. Just mental notes. Little moments that didn't sit right. Like how she started working late a lot, 3, sometimes 4 times a week. Always with a new excuse, client dinner, budget review, marketing audit. The phrases sounded official, convincing. She knew how to make things sound important. But the timing always felt too clean. She'd walk in at 9 p.m., makeup still fresh, hair a little tousled like she just walked out of a rooftop lounge instead of a boardroom. Or how she always took a shower right when she got home. No matter how late. No matter if she was only out for lunch with coworkers. She'd head straight for the bathroom, close the door, and emerge 20 minutes later smelling like something different every time. Her usual scent used to be soft, vanilla, maybe a little citrus. But lately she rotated through deeper ones. Spicier. Musky. And then there were the nights she wore perfume to work from home. Who does that? The phone behavior changed too. Claire used to be careless with her phone, left it on counters, couches, nightstands. She'd laugh when I picked it up to silence a call or read her off a text. But now? It never left her side. Always face down. Always locked. She used to forget her passcode every other week. Now she changed it so often I stopped trying to guess. Once I reached for it while we were watching TV, thought it was mine, and she snatched it back so fast it actually startled me. Sorry, she said, brushing it off. Sensitive client stuff. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. That I was seeing shadows in normal behavior. Every couple has weird phases, right? Maybe she was just tired. Maybe I was. But then I started noticing the lingerie. Claire never had much use for it before. Said it was scratchy, impractical, made by men who think we sleep in corsets. So when I saw a lace bodysuit drying on the laundry rack, I did a double take. Then another. There were tags still attached to some of them, tucked inside her top drawer. Things I'd never seen her wear. Things I'd never taken off her. And yet they kept showing up. One day, while folding laundry, I found a receipt tucked into her jeans pocket. It was from a boutique in Palo Alto. Nearly $300. It listed silk robes, lace bralettes, and something called a whisper thong. The kind of purchase you don't make for comfort. I didn't confront her. Couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I started testing things. Subtle things. I asked her how her meeting with the finance team went last Thursday. She blinked. Just once. Then nodded and said, "Oh, it was fine. Same as always. Except I'd made it up." There was no meeting with finance on her shared calendar. Another time, I mentioned that her office parking garage had been closed that day. "Oh yeah," she said quickly. "I had to park on the street. Total nightmare. But I had driven past the building. The garage was wide open. It wasn't the lies themselves that got me. It was how easy they came, how naturally she slipped into them, how smoothly she switched tracks, like she'd rehearsed. And maybe she had. One Saturday morning, she claimed she had to run errands. Target, Trader Joe's, maybe the cleaners. She rattled off as she grabbed her keys. I kissed her goodbye and waited exactly 20 minutes. Then I got in my car and drove. I didn't follow her directly. I took a longer route just in case I chickened out. When I finally reached the shopping plaza, I circled once. Her car wasn't there. Not in the grocery lot. Not near the dry cleaners. Not anywhere. I drove home slower than I'd left. She returned 2 hours later, carrying a grocery bag with exactly 2 items. Almond milk and a bouquet of flowers. She set them on the counter like nothing was off. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said and tried to smile. "Looks like they were out of everything, huh?" She laughed. "Pretty much. I just gave up." I wanted to ask where she'd really gone. I wanted to say, "Why do you need to lie about milk?" But I didn't, because deep down I already knew the answer. She didn't want me to know her world. Not anymore. The shift had already happened. This wasn't a glitch. It was a system update I hadn't been told about. I started keeping a notebook, an actual spiral-bound thing I kept in my sock drawer. I filled it with dates, times, receipts, excuses. I wasn't trying to be obsessive. I just needed something real to hold on to. Something that didn't gaslight me back into silence. And the more I wrote down, the clearer the pattern became. Claire didn't forget things anymore. Didn't misplace her keys, didn't oversleep, didn't forget birthdays. Everything in her life was polished and precise, like she was always ready for inspection. She started ironing her clothes in the morning, something she hadn't done in 10 years. She wore lipstick to walk the dog. She took selfies in the car but never posted them. And then there were the work dinners. Always last minute. Always on nights I had plans. She'd say, "Don't wait up," and I'd pretend not to feel the sting. One night, I texted her at 10:43 p.m. just to see. She replied instantly, "Still at the table. Sorry, babe. Love you." But the next morning I checked our phone bill. The message came from a different tower, 1 mile away from the restaurant she claimed to be at. Still, I said nothing. I played the role. But inside, something had shifted for me, too. I stopped listening to her explanations. I started listening to the silence that came afterward. I stopped sleeping next to her. I was in the bed, sure, but I wasn't with her. I watched her drift off, her breathing steady, her body curled away from me, and realized I hadn't touched her without asking in weeks, maybe months. She stopped initiating affection, stopped teasing, stopped asking about my day. We were still saying "love you" at the end of texts, but it felt more like a handshake now. The day I knew for sure was the day she changed her passwords. We shared everything, emails, Netflix, the whole deal. But suddenly, mine stopped working. "Oh, weird," she said when I mentioned it. I had to update stuff for work security. But even our shared grocery app had a new login. She was locking me out in pieces. Digitally, emotionally, and now physically. The truth wasn't just outside our house anymore. It was seeping in through the walls, sitting in the spaces between us, humming beneath the surface of every conversation. And for the first time, I realized it had been there for a long time. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The thing about doubt is it doesn't scream. It whispers. And it keeps whispering, even when you want it to stop. I didn't want to become that guy, the one who snoops, who second-guesses every look and word. But when your life starts to feel unfamiliar in your own hands, you stop caring about dignity. You just want the truth, no matter how it shows up. It started with the car. Claire had taken my SUV the night before, said hers was making a weird noise, which wasn't unusual. We'd been talking about replacing it anyway. She came back late, close to midnight. Didn't say where she'd gone, only that it ran long. The next morning, I got up early to head to the hardware store. Her keys were still in her purse, so I grabbed mine and climbed into my own car. That's when I saw it. The passenger seat was pushed all the way back. Reclined. Claire's barely 5'3". She drives hunched over the wheel, usually with a pillow behind her back. Whoever had been in that seat was tall, taller than me even. I just sat there for a while, staring at it, my hand resting on the gearshift like I was afraid to move it. My breath felt shallow, cold, even though the sun was already climbing. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I also didn't adjust the seat. I left it exactly where it was, like I needed to prove to myself later that I hadn't imagined it. What really broke something open, though, came a week later. Claire had an early meeting and forgot her laptop. She called around 8 a.m., frantic. "Can you bring it to me?" "I left it in the glove compartment," she said. "Just tell the front desk. It's fine." I drove it over. I remember sitting in the parking lot outside her office tower, holding the laptop bag and staring at the building. The morning was quiet, still humid from the early spring air. I didn't go inside right away. Instead, I opened the glove compartment like she told me. The laptop was there. So was something else. Folded in half, tucked beneath the takeout menu, was a parking stub. At first, I barely registered it, just a crumpled slip with a barcode. But when I glanced at the logo on top, my stomach sank. Hotel Valencia, Los Gatos. It was dated 2 Thursdays ago. Check-in time, 6:14 p.m. The same day she said she was flying to Chicago for a marketing conference. I stared at that receipt for a long time. I remember the night she left for Chicago. She'd packed a light carry-on, wore a blazer, and asked me not to drive her. Said she had a lift scheduled. No point in both of us sitting through airport traffic. She smiled. She kissed me goodbye, said she'd be back Saturday afternoon. I even texted her that night, asking how the hotel was. She said, "Small, but cozy," and sent a photo of a view from a 10th floor window. Hotel Valencia only has 6 floors. I felt something in me crack. That wasn't all. Folded between the pages of her planner, stuffed into the pocket where she kept coupons and old receipts, was a thin bar tab from the same night. 2 cocktails. One listed as smoked old-fashioned, the other French pear martini. Hers, probably. She always liked drinks with fancy names. I never did. I didn't confront her. Not then. I placed the laptop back in the bag. But I slipped the receipts into my jacket pocket first. That afternoon, I sat in my office at work, staring at my computer screen and not seeing a single thing. I looked up the hotel. I looked up the bar menu. I looked up the name of the martini. I even called the hotel anonymously, asked about their check-in procedures, whether they send emails or paper receipts. The woman on the phone was polite, told me they do both. Claire never mentioned a paper receipt. And she never mentioned staying 20 minutes from home instead of flying halfway across the country. I went through her travel emails. The ones in her inbox. Nothing about Chicago. No flight confirmation. No itinerary. But she had posted a photo on her Instagram. Airport lounge food, wine glass, boarding pass strategically blurred in the corner. I zoomed in. The wine was from a label I recognized. A wine bar in Santana Row. She never left town. Couldn't breathe. I had to walk out of my office, past my coworkers with their coffee and spreadsheets, past the receptionist who smiled at me without knowing my world was falling apart in real time. I sat in my car with the windows rolled down and just stared ahead. The sun was warm. My hands were cold. That night, I watched her closely. She talked about her trip, told me stories about the keynote speaker, about the free hotel breakfast, about the guy in her workshop who kept asking dumb questions. She was animated. She laughed. She asked if I wanted to order takeout and watch a documentary. I nodded, but I didn't hear a word she said. All I could hear was the silence between the lies. And that's when I knew. This wasn't some emotional affair. This wasn't texting late at night or venting to someone about our marriage and crossing a line. This was a real, physical thing. She had moved on while keeping one foot planted in our house, in our kitchen, in our shared bed. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was managing. The lies weren't clumsy. They were smooth, practiced, efficient. I began to notice more. The way she always packed light for her business trips. The way her clothes came back without wrinkles. The way she never asked me to pick her up from the airport anymore. Her planner had dates crossed out with no notes. Her credit card statements showed duplicate charges for ride shares, 2 pickups, 2 destinations, 1 night. The kicker? One night, while she was asleep, her phone buzzed. Just once. I know I shouldn't have. I know. But I picked it up. The preview on the lock screen showed a name. R. Mays. The initials matched the wallet. The same name she had mentioned once, casually, like it meant nothing. Richard Mays. Finance team. Funny guy, she said. Total numbers nerd. The message said, still thinking about last night. You were incredible. I stared at the screen until the message faded. Then I put the phone back, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the numbness wash over me like cold rain. I didn't wake her. What would I say? That I saw the truth? That I knew? The evidence was all around me now. Physical, digital, emotional. It wasn't in my head anymore. She wasn't just distant. She wasn't just tired or stressed or busy with work. She was living in 2 realities. And I'd only just stepped into hers by mistake that I didn't explode. That's what surprised me the most. I always assumed if something like this ever happened, I'd break a window or scream or throw her clothes on the lawn. But when the truth settled in, when it went from suspicion to certainty, I didn't rage. I calculated. I began to move differently, quietly, precisely, like her. I stopped asking questions I already knew the answers to. I stopped waiting for honesty from someone who had mastered selective truth. Instead, I watched. I listened. And I started looking beneath the surface of what Claire said. And what she signed. It started with a letter from the bank. Just a plain white envelope addressed to both of us. I opened it expecting a monthly statement, maybe a promotion for a new savings plan. But inside was a confirmation for the opening of a new checking account. Under Claire's name. Linked to our home address. Linked to our joint filing status. And it hadn't come through our usual bank. At first, I figured maybe she wanted a private account. Something for gifts, surprises. But the balance inside wasn't trivial. It was growing. Rapidly. Monthly deposits that mirrored the amount we both took home after taxes. Almost double what she told me she earned. So either she'd gotten a raise big enough to fund a second lifestyle, or she was funneling money from somewhere else. I didn't confront her. I copied the statement, put it back, and began digging. Over the next 2 weeks, I pulled threads. Quiet ones. I checked our credit reports, which I hadn't done in over a year. First, everything looked normal. Then I spotted a second inquiry from a lender I didn't recognize. One tied to a financial institution that handled real estate loans. Claire had applied for a home equity line of credit. Against our house. I called the bank. Asked a few questions. Didn't say much. The woman on the line said the request was processing, and the paperwork had been received 2 days ago, signed digitally, from our shared IP address. But I hadn't signed anything. When I asked for a copy, she emailed it over. There it was. My name. My signature. Forged, but convincingly. The date, the click trail, everything pointed to our home computer. I stared at it for a long time, the digital ink still fresh on the screen. I checked the history on the laptop. She'd cleared it. Every log, every cookie, every recent file. It was too clean. Cleaner than she normally kept anything. That same day, I found an email thread tucked inside the downloads folder. Something she must have missed. It was labeled future planning and contained a chain of correspondence between her and a financial advisor. They'd been discussing individual separation strategies, asset division under California community property law, and minimizing retirement account disruption during transition. I read it 3 times. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't impulsive. This was structural. Claire wasn't preparing to leave me in an emotional storm. She was planning to remove me like a tumor. Clean lines, no drama, no trace left behind. There were references to timelines, exit strategies, housing transitions. The emails didn't even reference me by name. Just initials, BD, as in Benjamin Drake. One line chilled me. Once BD is relocated, we'll finalize step 2 and initiate the personal account rollover. Relocated? Like I was a box she had scheduled for delivery? I scrolled further and found another thread. This one with an attorney. Same casual tone. No emotional language. Pure logistics. She asked questions about filing procedures, about how to avoid court delays, and whether certain spousal protections could be waived. She had even sent over documents for advance review, pre-drafted filings. The lawyer's reply made it clear she was taking the lead. Thanks, Claire. These drafts are solid. You've clearly done your homework. I sat there, the light from the screen cold on my face. My ears were ringing. That night, she came home like normal, smiled, told me about her client dinner, kicked off her shoes and poured herself a glass of wine. She looked tired but not stressed, like someone nearing the end of a long project. I poured myself a drink too, just water, but stood at the sink watching her reflection in the microwave door. We were living in different films. I was in a psychological drama. She was in a soft reboot. So I adjusted. I began locking down what I could. Quietly. One thing at a time. I froze access to our joint accounts, not the ones she used, but the ones I had opened when I started working with my father's construction firm 15 years ago. Claire never paid much attention to them. She thought they were side savings. She was wrong. I updated the passwords. I revoked shared access to our cloud drives. I pulled all our tax returns and stored them on a separate hard drive. I started scanning documents, old insurance forms, life policy details, retirement accounts, and saved them under encrypted folders. I made an appointment with a cybersecurity expert I found online. Told him I wanted to make sure my home devices weren't being monitored. At first, he was polite. Then he got serious. Turned out Claire had installed a keylogger on our home desktop. 6 months ago. I asked how that was legal. He just raised his eyebrows and said it's not. But it's easy. She had been tracking my logins, reading my emails, monitoring my finances, all while acting like we were still deciding what to watch on Netflix. I had to step outside when I heard that. The air hit my lungs like cold ash. What do you do when the person you trusted most becomes the person watching you through a digital peephole? That night, I started sleeping in the guest room. She noticed. Asked if I was feeling sick. I said, just tired. She nodded, poured herself another glass of wine, and didn't ask again. Claire had always been good at leaving things unsaid. Now I knew why. She didn't need me angry. She needed me docile. She wasn't trying to spark a confrontation. She was setting a stage. So when the curtain dropped and the lights came on, I'd already be gone, emotionally, financially, maybe even legally. She wanted to cut the wire without the explosion. But I wasn't going to let her control the ending. So I watched her script. I studied the footnotes. I tracked the margins of her plan. And then I began writing one of my own. Not for revenge. For survival. It was a Thursday night when I saw her for who she really was. I hadn't planned to go. I didn't even know the event was happening until that morning. She left the invitation on the kitchen counter by mistake. It was printed on thick cardstock with gold embossed lettering, Annual Achievement Dinner, Prestige Marketing Group. The kind of event where speeches are made, trophies are handed out, and everyone pretends they like each other over expensive cocktails. I stared at it for a long time. Claire had never mentioned it. No, what should I wear? No, do you want to come with me? Not even a hint that she'd be out that night. She'd told me she had just a quick work dinner with her team. Nothing major. But the event ran from 6 to 10 p.m. at an upscale venue near Santana Row. Black tie optional. Hosted bar. I decided to go. Not to confront her. Not to make a scene. Just to see. I arrived just before 8. I wore a blazer I hadn't put on in over a year, the one she used to compliment when we had nights out. I didn't RSVP. I didn't need to. I walked in like I belonged there, like I was a plus one who'd been delayed. The venue was exactly what I expected. White linen tables. Crystal glasses that caught the light. Conversations that floated around the room in that polished, corporate tone of artificial enthusiasm. No one looked up as I entered. No one asked who I was. Then I saw her. Claire stood near the front of the room on a low stage, mid-speech, smiling that confident smile she used to wear in college before adult life wore the edges down. Her posture was perfect, back straight, shoulders relaxed, her hand wrapped loosely around the microphone. She looked like she belonged up there. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. Behind her stood a man. Tall. Good posture. Sharp suit. I didn't recognize him at first. Then he stepped forward and placed a hand gently on her back as she finished her speech, guiding her off the stage like they'd rehearsed it. And I remembered the initials. RM. Richard Mays. I watched them from the far edge of the room near the bar. Claire didn't see me. She was too caught up in it, too comfortable in that space that was never meant for both of us. She laughed as Richard whispered something in her ear. Her smile stretched wider than I'd seen in months. She tucked a piece of hair behind her ear and leaned in. He rested his hand casually on her lower back. It didn't look like the first time he'd done it. It looked like muscle memory. They weren't careful. They weren't hiding. And why would they? No one in that room knew me. To them, she was just Claire, the rising star with the magnetic presence and the doting boss who stood a little too close. I stood still as people applauded. Claire and Richard clinked glasses with a group near the stage, and I watched as she accepted compliments, nodded graciously, even dabbed at the corner of her eye like the moment was overwhelming. She looked happy. She looked free. And in that instant I realized something I hadn't let myself feel before, not just betrayal, not just anger. I felt invisible. I left before she saw me. Slipped out as quietly as I came in. No one noticed. The parking lot was cool and silent, the street lamps humming overhead. I sat in my car, gripping the wheel, waiting for something, tears, fury, maybe a scream. But nothing came. Just that hollow weight in the center of my chest. That realization that I had already been erased from her story. That she had been writing a new chapter without me long before I ever opened my eyes. The next morning she came home early. Said the dinner ended early. That everyone just dispersed quickly after the awards. She dropped her heels by the door, padded into the kitchen in her stocking feet, and smiled at me over a coffee mug like she was still playing house. She kissed my cheek. Missed you last night. I didn't respond. Couldn't. That smile, that casual sweetness, it was all part of the character she still played for me. But I knew better now. I had seen the unedited version. I'd seen the real Claire. Later that morning, she got a little emotional. Maybe guilt finally cracked through the armor. She sat next to me on the edge of the bed, pulled my hand into hers, and stared at our wedding photo on the dresser like it meant something again. I know I've been distracted lately, she said, her voice careful. I stayed quiet. I'm just under a lot of pressure. Work's been insane. I want to be better about making time for us. I nodded slowly. She was good. I'll give her that. If I hadn't been there the night before, I might have believed her. I might have held on to that sentence like a promise. But I had seen her hand on his arm. Her smile when she wasn't being watched. That was the version of Claire I hadn't met before. I think we should take a trip, she added. Maybe the coast. Just us. Unplug. I forced a smile. Yeah. Sounds nice. And just like that, she kissed my hand, got up, and started folding laundry like she hadn't just lied to my face. But I didn't feel rage. Not anymore. I felt clarity. She had revealed everything without knowing. No shouting. No cheating text messages left open by mistake. No lipstick on a collar. Just one night in a room where she didn't expect me to be, and it told me everything I needed. That was the night I stopped doubting myself. That was the night the noise stopped. After that night, I stopped hoping for confessions. Claire had already told me everything she needed to, just not with words. I turned inward. My goal wasn't revenge. It was survival. Precision. I froze our joint accounts, notified the bank of suspected forgery on the Helic documents, and set alerts for any activity under my name. Quietly, I began pulling our shared assets apart.